everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Following the lead of many other shows, this year's East LA Cape is going digital. The East Los Angeles Comic Book Art and Pop Culture Expo, or CAPE for short, was founded in 2016 by a group of pop culture and comic book fans who grew up in East LA. Headed by Peter J. Malini, who owns Nostalgic Books and Comics in San Diego, California, the show is dedicated to creating community and bringing together artists and vendors from our surrounding neighborhoods so that we can all enjoy the art that our community has to offer, and to connect you to independent artists so that you can support their work. This is our 13th episode of our Virtual Artist Alley, where we will be highlighting our community of artists and vendors. Danny Ramirez started to draw as a kid when he was about 11 years old, being inspired by one of his older brothers. He did not get into comic books until he was about 14, and that's when he knew he wanted to be a comic book artist. After high school, he fell out of art due to a few things going on in his life and stopped drawing for a few years. It wasn't until about 10 years later that he wanted to get back to it and make it a career. It was then that he decided to go to art school and get his degree in media arts and animation at the Art Institute of California in Los Angeles. Daniel described his college experience as a bit of a struggle, but he graduated and earned his bachelor's degree in December of 2013. Ever since then, he has been working professionally as an artist. During the time that he went back to school, he started working with a friend who owns Tribe Studio Comics, a small indie publisher in Arizona. That's when he got his first published work in comics. During that time, he began to create his own character, Repo, Thief for Hire, and had it published with Tribe. Eventually, he took Repo out of the Tribe lineup. Once he was ready to get it back up and running, he decided to self-publish Repo and take it in a different direction creatively. Throughout all of this time, he has been building his brand and studio name, BadAppleDesignz Studio. He describes this endeavor as being quite a ride that he has just started to shift into second gear. Apple. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Daniel.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Cool. So let's start at the beginning. How did you get into art?
I was about 11 when I got into art. My brother, actually all my brothers are into art. They did it at one point or another. But one of my brothers, he was a car designer in high school. He would design cars, and he would draw the Frank Frazetta stuff, a lot of fantasy art. And around 10 or 11, I would always see him drawing, and I would ask him, hey, how do you do it? He's like, just do it. But seeing him draw got me to wanting to do that. And, I would just draw, start like everybody, your stick figures, or try to draw whatever you can. I kind of, started from there. But it really wasn't until about like late junior high, which now everybody calls it middle school. But it wasn't until then when I kind of started getting more into it. And it was 91 when I got my first comic. And actually, X-Force #1, I'm sure for many, many people, X-Force #1 was like what really got everybody into, that. And for me, that's what it was. So 11 is when I started drawing, looking at watching my brother do it. And then later on, it's when I just got into comic books, which is when I was like around 14. So yeah, throughout that time, it was just me getting into the learning and habit of drawing just different things. I would draw a lot of little tankers and aircrafts instead of paying attention in class. Kids, pay attention in class. Don't do what I did. But I would do all that, and then just kind of led to comics once I got into comic books.
I feel like that's a common thread with a lot of the artists is there's just a lot of doodling going on in like spaces and areas where you're just supposed to be paying attention.
Right. Yeah.
So what are you selling today? Like what services do you have, or what can people commission you for? Or what do you have to offer that people can commission you for?
Yeah. So I take a lot of commissions. A lot of people commission me for a lot of comic book stuff. I have my own comic book out, which you guys can see in my background. It's Repo, Thief for Hire. I'm going to have that comic book out very soon. But in terms of services, anything freelance. People always ask me, hey, do you do portraits? And I'm like, yes, I can, very well. Can you do me one? No, I don't like doing portraits, but I can. But yeah, so I can do basically a lot of different things. I got into graphic design as well. So As a freelancer, I do a lot of graphic design work, a lot of concept artwork I've done for a few different studios. And so anything along that line, I can definitely do. I do have a few small products here and there, like buttons, some coffee mugs. I have posters and stuff that I would sell normally at shows and cons. But in terms of commissioning me, I do just about anything. So it's not just comic book artwork. I trust me, I get requests for some, just weird stuff or anything all around. And I can do it if they like my style, if they like what I do, and I'll give them an initial sketch and see if they like it at no charge, just like, hey, this is what I can do. And if they like it, cool, we'll proceed. But yeah, just well-rounded. I do a lot of different things.
So you said you're coming out with the Repo book soon. What can you tell us about that series?
So Repo, when I first started working with my buddy who has he's a publisher, Tribe Studio Comics. Little shout out to Tribe because I got started with Tribe. They're out in Arizona. So my buddy Scott, where I was working with him and he was like, hey, do you have a character? And I was like, no. So I started developing Repo. And Repo thief for hire. So he's basically a high-end thief. And he's just trying to get around, financially trying to get money. He's not the richest guy in the world or anything. But so aside from that, he eventually kind of gets thrown into the your typical superhero needs to save the world type of thing. But through all that, he's just trying to make a living. Like everybody, he has bills, he has debt. This is not a spoiler or anything. He has a heart condition, so he's dying. Not like your Tony Starks where you're going to put something in here and it's going to keep him alive. He can actually die. So, so he's just trying to make as much money as possible, gets involved with a lot of different characters. I eventually start to introduce some more supernatural characters that he needs to, battle along the way. But that's pretty much what he is. He's a thief for hire. And I just throw him into a whole bunch of different situations and see if he can get out of it.
I'm curious, you said you don't do portraits. What do you have against portraits?
They're boring.
Why?
They're just boring to me. It's just, they come actually so easy for me to do. And it's just I see it more as a technical way of drawing, and it just doesn't interest me.
So is it just you see one thing and you make it look like the exact same thing? Is that the thing that you're not super into?
Yeah.
So if it was up to you, how would you transform that? Like, would it have to be a little?
Yeah. If I can kind of deviate from what just wanting the normal typical portrait, if I can add some of my creativity or spin to it, that definitely changes the whole thing. But if it's just, hey, can you draw my kid or my sister, brother, and wife, whatever, I'll be like, believe it or not, even at shows when I'm there, I actually had to stop for a while because it just, even adding that creative process to it, it just, I don't know, it just kind of just doesn't interest me. But even at shows, they'll come up to me and be like, hey, can you draw me as this character? Sure, why not? But then I start getting so many of them that I'm like, can I just do you want like a Spider-Man or something instead? But like I said, if it's just your standard portraits, I just shy away from it.
So where can people find you online or?
I'm just about everywhere. I'm everywhere, but currently not like actively everywhere. But Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Even though it's hard to get on Twitch, but I'm going to start. Periscope is one that I'm really at most of the time. It's the and that's pretty much all your standard social media. Wherever I can stream. I do have my YouTube channel, but not active in it. I have to find a way. I have to find a format because obviously you can't use certain music or just all that legal stuff. And so in Periscope, I can play whatever music I want in the background. So it's a lot. I just put my playlist stuff that I want to listen to, and but yeah, so you can find me everywhere. And I do have my website, which is BadAppleDesignz.com, and designs is with the Z at the end and not an S. But yeah, you can pretty much find me everywhere. just look for the blue face. There's a, I don't have it here, but my everywhere you go, there's going to be a blue face of me, and you'll know that's me. So not hard to find.
So this is something that we've been asking everyone. And it's basically, how has the pandemic affected you? Has it affected your creative process in a positive way or a negative way, or you feel more productive, less productive? How do you think how has your life been since like March?
You know what? It's actually helped me. It actually helped me get back into doing this. I kind of stopped doing a lot of things creatively for about a year. I stepped away from it for personal reasons, more like for my health, I went through anxiety and all this kind of stuff. It was crazy, but um, I took a lot of time off, and that was very helpful. But also, it took me down a path where I started to lose my creative juices in a way where I just didn't feel like drawing anymore because I got so used to not doing it anymore. So when all this happened, it did take me a little bit of time. We're in, what month are we? I have no clue, right? But since March, it took me maybe a couple of months, maybe 3 months or so, to start seeing. I'm like, all this downtime, I need to get back to drawing and creating. And so little by little, it actually helped me in that sense creatively to get back to it. So not saying it was a good thing it happened, but being what it is, it really allowed me to just jump back into things. Now I'm like full focused on what I want to do. Repo, I kind of just pushed it off to the side and wasn't doing anything with it. And that's a bad thing because I have a lot of followers. I mean, not like millions, but I have enough followers to where they're always asking me, "Hey, when's the next issue of Repo coming up?" And I want to see Repo. What's going on with Repo? And that kind of put into my head, hey, there's an audience out there for my character. And even though I've lost a lot of steam, because at one point before all this, before my health thing with the anxiety, I was very very active on social media, especially Periscope. There was times when I was getting 100,000 viewers on Periscope, and they just that brought in a lot of commission work. That brought in a lot more interest in my character. So it was like full steam ahead, and then I just like stopped it. I put the brakes. So now it's just kind of trying to get that going again. So yeah, so it's pandemic is not a good thing for any of us, but definitely it put me back on track to being creative.
So you talked about how you got into comics in the '90s. So who are your big inspirations?
Biggest inspiration, there's no secret, Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld's X-Force #1. I even told Rob this story. I walked into 7-Eleven, saw the comic book rack, X-Force #1, polybag. And as soon as I opened it, I looked at it. That was it. I knew that's what I wanted to become. I wanted to become a comic book artist, and that was Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld's art is the one that really got me going. And aside from that, obviously all the main Image guys, were the ones who kind of inspired me a lot. But Rob Liefeld is the creator that got me wanting to do comic books, being a comic book artist. And then along the way, again, you get your 7 Image founders. But I think the second biggest influence was Stephen Platt. Once he came along, oh man, that just blew my mind. Couple that with Rob Liefeld and Stephen Platt stuff. If you look at my work, that's really what kind of the inspiration comes from. A lot of my work does. So those were the main 2 artists that really influenced. Obviously, I'm a huge cartoon fan. Looney Tunes, oh good lord, I like Bugs Bunny was my was the one that I grew up with, but so animation is also was big for me, which is why when I went to school, I wanted to become an animator as well. And and then Frank Frazetta, a lot of different types of art. I'm a huge Michelangelo, the Renaissance. Oh man, I love that stuff. So just a lot of different artists influenced me in terms of style and how do I approach things like that. But comic book wise, Rob Liefeld, that's where everything starts from.
You find yourself mixing those two worlds a lot, like the Renaissance kind of inspiration and the comic inspiration, a lot of the stuff that you do?
I do. You know what? I think now is where I'm doing it more. Back then, it was just all comic books, 24/7. Just that's all I wanted to do, style wise. And now I do see myself kind of meshing all of that together. Especially I'm a huge, obviously Frank Frazetta, but not sure if you guys have heard of Ken Kelly and his stuff. When I was in high school, man, I just, that was I would constantly recreate his art. I know a lot of people recreated Frank Frazetta's art. I was always recreating Ken Kelly's art. And so, yeah, the fantasy stuff is definitely where a lot of my creative and concept art comes from. But yeah, so now you're gonna see that. Like once I get Repo going, you're gonna see a lot of that stuff come together. And there's even panels where I have a lot of Renaissance art in the background and stuff like that. So, and he's a thief, so a lot of the things that he will be stealing, going and getting, are things relating to a lot of the past great arts and stuff like that. So yeah.
So is art one of the main things that he steals? Is that kind of like a little commentary on like a little meta thing, like he's art and he steals art?
Exactly, in a way, yeah. I mean, it's not the main thing he steals. Obviously, when I introduce a lot of these other supernatural characters, some of the stuff he takes, that's kind of what activates all that stuff. But yeah, definitely the whole art thing.
So, where did the name Bad Apple come from?
Yeah, I love telling this story, and everybody loves asking me about this story. When I was it originates from my childhood nickname, which is Applehead, and when I was 5 years old, my dad shaved my head bald, and I had this huge apple head, right? And so my brother's friends and my brothers, they would always go back and forth and calling each other's names. My brothers were making fun of their brother's little brother, and when I came out with my shaved head, the apple head, that's where that name comes from. So as an artist, I would always use my last name, Ramirez, and I was trying to come up with the name for myself. And I didn't want to use Applehead because I'm like, well, if I suck and I become a really bad artist, I don't want to kill my childhood nickname. So I have to come up with something. And I'm not sure if it's everywhere, but it's obviously, me being Latino and everything, within the Latino community, family, and everything, people always tell you, hey, that's really bad, meaning it's really good. Hey, that's bad. That's bad. And they would always tell me about my art. Hey, that's really bad. It looks really bad. And so people were telling me so much about my art and what it looked like. I was playing around with the name and eventually just merged bad with apple. Again, and that's how the name Bad Apple came along.
When they called you Applehead, was it in Spanish or in English?
English.
English.
So yeah, and it's funny because they still call me that to really good friends, my brothers, of course. So from time to time they still call me Applehead or Apple. But yeah, it's a name that never goes away.
It's funny. I feel like that's very typical of like just taking the thing that you might be self-conscious about and like making it into a nickname.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Oh man.
Well, I don't know if Peter has any other questions. Cool. I think we covered almost everything. Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate you spending this lovely Sunday with us. And I will be putting your links right after this so that people can take screenshots.
Cool.
And yeah, thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.